The chains bit into her wrists before she even opened her eyes. That's the first thing Elena remembered. Not her name, not where she was, just the cold bite of iron and the smell of rot. She was 28 years old, though she'd lost count of the days since that mattered. Marcus Webb found her on a Tuesday. He'd ridden up from Tularosa under a sky so white it hurt to look at, searching for a mule someone said was worth buying. Marcus was 36, lean as a winter wolf, with hands that had dug more graves than he cared to count. People said his eyes looked like they'd seen the end of something important and never quite recovered. His horse moved slow through the scrubland as he reached the Garrett property around midday. The ranch looked like God had given up on it halfway through creation. The house squatted low and mean against the horizon, windows filmed with years of dust and neglect. The barn tilted south like it was trying to crawl away from its own shadow. A few chickens scratched at nothing. A dog barked twice, then quit, like it wasn't worth the effort. No voices, no movement, just emptiness that felt intentional. The man who met Marcus was thick through the middle, face flushed red even in the mild air, wiping greasy palms on filthier pants. "You Webb?" "I am." "Mule's in the barn. Take a look. I'll get the paperwork." Something in the man's voice made Marcus's jaw tighten. Something slick beneath the words, like oil floating on bad water. But he'd come for an animal, nothing more. He walked toward the barn, leading his mare by loose reins. The yard felt wrong, too quiet. Even the dust seemed afraid to move. When he pushed the barn door open, the smell hit him first. Hay, manure, and something sharper. Rust, iron, blood if you knew what death smelled like. Inside, thin light cut through roof cracks in straight lines. Marcus's eyes adjusted slowly. The mule stood in the far stall, solid and calm, but Marcus didn't move toward it. Something else occupied the shadows. A shape. Small. Wrong for a barn. He stepped closer. It was a woman. She lay curled on her side near rotting tack, wrists chained to the wall by a bolt, crusted with rust and old blood. Her dress was torn, filthy. Her hair hung in matted clumps. Bruises covered her skin in layers, purple, yellow, green, a timeline of violence. A scab stretched tight across her cheek. One eye swollen, nearly shut. She looked up at him, slow, scared, exhausted. She said nothing. Marcus knelt. His hand hovered near her face, then her wrist. "You're hurt bad." Still she didn't speak. A board creaked behind him. Marcus straightened and turned. The red-faced man stood in the doorway, backlit like a warning. "She don't talk. Found her wandering near my land couple weeks back, half dead. I fed her, gave her water, got her locked up because she's wild, mean as a rattler. Bit my nephew clean through the hand." Marcus's jaw set like stone, but he kept his face blank. "She's got the devil in her," the man added. "Got papers on her too, if you want." Marcus's voice cut through the air like a blade. "I'm here to buy a mule, not a person. That ain't what this is. Hell, I saved her." Marcus took one step forward. The man's hand twitched toward his revolver, but Marcus moved faster. His fist cracked against the man's jaw hard enough to sound like splitting wood. The man fell backward into the dirt outside, moaning. Marcus didn't look at him again. He returned to the woman. "I'm going to get you loose," he said quietly. She flinched at his voice but didn't pull away when he drew his knife and worked at the bolt. The metal was old, stiff with rust and what looked like dried blood. It fought him, but it gave. When he lifted her, she weighed almost nothing, like a shadow held together by breath alone. Marcus carried her past the man groaning in the dust, past the mule, past the yard that had witnessed too much. He set her on his horse, climbed up behind her, and rode away without looking back. She didn't speak. He didn't ask her name. Some names were buried deep, waiting to be earned again. They rode across the plains until the sun bled into the horizon. By nightfall, they reached a dry arroyo where juniper grew thick. Marcus laid out a blanket and handed her water. She took it with shaking hands. He cooked beans in a dented tin pot. She didn't reach for it at first. He left the bowl near her feet and turned his back. After a long moment, he heard her eat. They slowly, like each bite, hurt. That night, she didn't sleep. Her eyes stayed open, watching every shadow. Marcus pretended to sleep, but he stayed awake too. Something about the way she breathed told him the danger wasn't done. Not by a long shot. By the third day on the trail, she could sit upright again. On the fourth day, she no longer flinched when he came near. On the fifth, her voice finally rose, rough and cracked like old rope. "Name's Elena." Marcus nodded once. She washed her face in a stream that night until the water ran brown with dirt and blood. When she asked where they were going, Marcus said, "My land, past Bent Creek. No one comes out there unless they got reason." "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Marcus stared into the fire. A man who stays quiet while something wrong is happening is already dead. Just doesn't know it yet. Elena didn't answer, but the next morning she saddled the mule herself. By dusk, they reached Marcus's ranch, small but solid, tucked near a ridge where cottonwoods whispered in the wind. He showed her the spare room. She stood in the doorway a long time before stepping inside. Marcus didn't ask her to stay. He didn't need to. She slept for 2 days straight. Then the real story began. Marcus knew the quiet wouldn't last. Elena moved through the ranch like someone learning how to live again. She patched fences with slow, careful hands, fed the chickens even when her arms shook, washed her wounds with vinegar and hissed when it burned. She spoke little, but her eyes watched everything, like she expected chains to drop from the ceiling at any moment. Marcus gave her space. He didn't ask what had happened in that barn. She didn't ask why he helped her. They worked side by side in the long, hot days, but there was always something between them. Fear, memory, or maybe the start of something stronger. Then one morning, she was gone. Marcus saw the empty saddle first, the mule missing. Elena's tracks headed east. He followed fast, heart tight in his chest, not from anger, but a strange worry he didn't know how to name. He found her crouched in the brush 10 miles from the Garrett place. She wasn't running. She was watching the homestead. He stepped behind her without sound, but she still knew. "I didn't come to go back," she said. "I came to see if he's still breathing." Marcus's voice stayed even. "You thinking to finish him? I thought to know if he'd die on his own." She stared at the house. No smoke, no voices, no life. "I can't live knowing he might still breathe," she whispered. Marcus didn't try to stop her. Some things needed confronting. They walked to the house together. Inside, the air was thick with rot. Bottles on the floor, blood smeared on the boards. A boy, maybe 16, lay in a corner, clutching his stomach with a dirty rag. He looked up when they entered. "You came back?" he rasped. Elena froze. Marcus stepped slightly in front of her. "Where is he?" Elena asked. The boy coughed. "Gone. Took the wagon south 3 days ago. Said he'd be back with men. Said you'd regret getting loose." Marcus's jaw clenched. Elena stepped forward. "I'm not here for you." "I ain't a boy," the kid said, eyes hard. "I'm the one who held the chain while he whipped you." Elena's fingers twitched near her side. Her breathing shook. Marcus moved between them fast. "Enough." She stared at the boy for a long moment. Then her hand loosened, her eyes turned cold, not angry, just done. They left him there, the house silent behind them. That night, back at the ranch, Elena scrubbed herself clean in a basin until her skin turned red. Marcus waited outside by the fire, listening to the water splash and her breath quicken. When she stepped out, hair still wet, she stared into the flames. "I'm not afraid of him," she said. Marcus nodded. "I know. But I need to know how to make him afraid of me." Marcus met her eyes. Something had settled in her, something steady, controlled, and dangerous. "Then we start tomorrow." The next days changed everything. They trained from before sunrise. Marcus taught her how to hold a rifle, how to brace her shoulder so the recoil wouldn't bruise. She learned fast, steady aim, quiet breath, cold focus. "You miss your shot," Marcus said, watching her reload. "You better be ready to follow with something sharper." She nodded and fired again, hitting a pine knot dead center. They practiced with knives, too. Marcus taught her how to stand, how to move her feet, how to strike with strength that didn't rely on size. She listened to every word. No fear, no hesitation. They set traps, snares, tripwires, a false floorboard that dropped weighted nails. Marcus made her reset each one, blindfolded. "Know your ground better than the men who want to take it," he said. She repeated his lessons until she could rebuild each trap in the dark. At night, she sat by the fire with her knees pulled close. Quiet. Thinking. Marcus didn't push her to talk, but sometimes she did, voice calm, like recounting someone else's memories. "He thought breaking me was a kind of keeping," she said, "like trapping a bird till it stops trying to fly." Marcus spit into the dust. "He won't be thinking anything when you're done." She didn't smile, but her eyes softened just a little. Then one evening, a rider appeared on the trail, dust rising behind him. He stopped at the gate and called out. Marcus met him first, rifle resting easy in his hands. The rider was lean, scar down his lip, eyes too sharp to trust. "I come from south of Red Mesa," he said. "Looking for a woman, short hair, talks little, rode off with a man fits your look." Marcus didn't answer. The man smirked. "Name's Cade. My uncle's been missing a month. Last seen with a mule and a busted jaw." Elena stepped from the barn then. Her face had healed some, but her eyes were cold fire. Cade's smile died. "You—" Before he could finish, Elena spoke. "Tell your uncle I'll come find him, not the other way around." Cade swallowed, fear flickering behind his eyes. He turned his horse and rode off, fast. Elena watched him disappear. Marcus looked at her carefully. "That was a choice. I made it. You could have killed him. That would have been mercy." Marcus didn't argue. 2 days later, they found a trap near the river. Sprung. Blood on the dirt. Chicken gone. "He's testing us," Marcus said. Elena crouched low, eyes scanning the trail. "He wants us to chase." "We won't." "No," she said. "He'll come here." They fortified the ranch, dug trenches, lined the barn entrance with broken glass and old nails. Elena wore a pistol low on her hip now, moving like someone who had finally stepped into her own shadow. Then at dusk, smoke rose on the horizon. 3 riders, 1 wagon, Cade at the front. Elena stepped forward beside Marcus, calm as the settling dust. "They think I'm still afraid," she said quietly. Marcus looked at her. "Are you?" She didn't answer because she didn't have to. Dusk settled like a slow warning across the plains. The sky glowed orange at the edges, fading into deep, bruised purple. Marcus stood on the porch with his rifle held low but ready. Elena stepped forward beside him, shoulders straight, face steady, breath calm. 3 riders approached. Cade led them. Behind him came 2 hired guns, rough men with easy mouths and ugly hearts. Wagon rolled behind them, empty except for rope and iron. They came not to talk. They came to take her back. But Elena wasn't the same woman they had chained in a barn. Cade called out, "We're here for the girl. Hand her over and maybe we leave you breathing." Elena stepped past Marcus into the open yard. The breeze lifted her hair off her bruised cheek. "Then come take me," she said. Cade grinned, cruel and sure of himself. He thought she was bluffing. He thought she was still weak. He thought, wrong. His hand dropped toward his gun. Too slow. A single shot cracked through the evening air. Cade's hat flew from his head, spinning into the dirt. The bullet had shaved a line across his temple, close enough to take skin. Marcus blinked. He hadn't fired. It was Elena. The 2 hired guns jerked back in surprise. Before one could run for cover, Marcus fired once, dropping him with a shot to the throat. The other dove behind the wagon, scrambling for safety. He didn't make it. One of Elena's traps, spiked boards, hidden under loose dirt, caught his leg. His scream tore across the yard. Cade stumbled behind the wagon, clutching his bleeding temple. Elena walked toward him slowly, steady, cold, not shaking, not afraid. Marcus followed behind her, covering every angle with his rifle. But Elena didn't need him now. This was her storm, her reckoning. Cade tried to lift his pistol. "You don't have the guts," he cried through clenched teeth. Her bullet hit his shoulder. He spun, fell, crawled in circles in the dirt, pain twisting his face. "You should have died in that barn," he gasped. Elena kept walking. "You held the chain," she said, "and you smiled while I bled." He tried to crawl backward, boots kicking hopelessly. "I was following orders. It wasn't me. It wasn't my choice." Elena knelt beside him, her voice steady and clear. "You enjoyed it. That's what makes you worse." Cade sobbed as she lifted her pistol, but she didn't let him beg. She didn't need to hear it. She fired once. His body sagged still. Elena stood up slowly, breathing deep, looking at her hands like she wasn't sure they belonged to her anymore. Marcus stepped beside her. "You done?" She looked at the sky, at the barn, at the dirt still shaking from the fight. "For now," she said. They buried the bodies far from the ranch, under flat stones on dead ground where nothing grew. Elena worked the shovel without stopping, as if she had waited years for the weight of dirt to feel this final. When they finished, she washed in silence. Marcus watched her from the porch, knowing this wasn't the end. Not for her. Not for what had been done. For weeks afterward, the ranch settled into a strange calm. Elena woke early, fed the animals, tended the land. She moved with purpose but little peace. Some days she laughed once or twice, a sound Marcus had never imagined she could make. Other days, her eyes looked far away, like she was walking through old memories. Marcus didn't push. Healing wasn't a straight road. Revenge wasn't either. But one morning he found her sitting on the ridge overlooking the valley, boots dusty, hands folded in her lap, eyes hard. "They won't stop with him," she said. "Men like that don't die alone." Marcus sat beside her. "No, they don't. I don't want fear anymore," she whispered. "I want memory. I want them to know I remember." Marcus took a slow breath. "Then we find the others." She turned her head. "You'd help me?" "I started this," he said. "I won't let you finish alone." The wind rolled across the ridge, cold and steady. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, letting it touch the parts of her heart that had been locked away. When she opened them again, something new lived there. Not fear, not anger, purpose. Marcus rode into town that same afternoon. He returned with rifles, powder, wire coils, and a tin box filled with names. Names spoken in whispers, names of men who walked free, while others suffered in silence. Elena opened the box and saw the names written on folded slips. Her hands didn't shake, her voice didn't tremble. "I'm going to find them," she said. Marcus nodded. "We'll start at first light." So they rode, west, north, south, across hard country, through towns with voices that carried old sins, through places where silence hid the wicked. Together they hunted men who thought the past would stay buried. Elena became a shadow whispered in saloons, a warning spoken at campfires, a name carved into fear. Marcus became the quiet storm at her side, steady and fierce in his loyalty. But somewhere in all that blood and dust, something else grew too. Not fast, not loud, but real. One evening, months after the barn, after the graves, after the smoke and the pain, Marcus found Elena sitting by a fire, warming her hands. She looked at him, really looked. "You saved me," she said softly. Marcus shook his head. "No, you saved yourself. I just cut the chain." She stared at the flames. "What do we do now?" Marcus watched her like a man watching dawn break over land he thought was lost. "We live," he said, "if you want to." She nodded, slow and certain. "I think I do." They built a small home near the ridge, a place where the land was quiet and the past felt distant, a place where she planted lavender and learned to breathe again, a place where Marcus finally smiled without pain behind it. Elena still carried her pistols. Marcus still watched the trail at night. Danger didn't vanish. Memory didn't fade. But life grew anyway. And one evening, as the sun dipped low and the wind carried the smell of juniper across the valley, Elena said, "It's quiet now." Marcus took her hand. For the first time since the barn, Elena let someone hold it. The road behind them was made of fire. The road ahead was made of healing. And they walked it together. If you enjoy emotional Wild West drama, powerful storytelling, and stories that grab your heart from the first minute until the last, this one is for you. Don't forget to like, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe for more cinematic Wild West stories every day.